Okay, so I want to welcome everyone to week 13 of xEssentials. Tonight's topic is using lasers in your display. Tonight, a little different aspect of creating something different in your display. So, Garrett's used one in used lasers in the commercial display before, and I've deemed him an expert in this area. So, Garrett, you've got the floor.
Okay, hey everybody. My name is Garrett Crabtree. Talk a little bit about myself. Who I am a laserist. That is what we call people who use lasers. The co-owner operator of Lapis Laser Display, that's our laser company. Co-owner operator of the Holiday Laser Dome. I am a certified LSO, laser safety officer with the International Laser Display Association, or ILDA. Basically what that means is I took a course and passed. It doesn't really hold any sort of real authority, but I do sort of know what I'm talking about here. So, and this is me. To the left is my partner, Ryan Daly. He's basically my business partner and handles a lot of the business affairs, while I'm sort of the nerd who handles this kind of stuff. So, all right, Lapis Laser Display, this is my company. We do a lot of commercial work, mostly corporate work, not a whole lot of big EDM shows and concerts like that. Do a lot of things with graphics. So a few of our clients include Churchill Downs, Louisville Ballet, Texas Roadhouse, U of L. You can read that. This is a picture of our rendition of Swan Lake done with the Louisville Ballet. Used a bunch of lasers in that as the backdrop. And let's continue here. This so the way I got into lasers, basically, I'm a DJ. I DJ a lot. About 10 years ago, I started incorporating DMX lighting into my DJ sets, and eventually sort of graduated to purchasing some cheap lasers. And I use the lasers in my DJ sets. And Ryan, my partner now, was doing video projection mapping for Waverly Hills Haunted House. Waverly Hills is a old sanitarium. By the way, I am in Louisville, Kentucky. I don't know if I mentioned that. Waverly Hills is an old sanitarium. It's not in use anymore. They do haunted houses, and you can basically pay to stay overnight. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the world. It's been on a lot of TV shows, that kind of thing. So Ryan came to me because the owner of Waverly Hills wanted to do some laser stuff. So we kind of dove in and did a Christmas show for him. That was sort of my first experience with professional laser software, professional lasers. It was a daunting task, probably far too much for a newbie to get started with. We were using 8 individually controlled lasers. It was a 10-minute graphic show, synced to music, and it was integrated with DMX lighting and some strobes. Here's a picture, and these are not very good pictures, but as you can see, up here we had DMX pars in each one of the lights. Had our little Tune 2 on laser before the show. So it was a drive-in type show. This over here just shows you, it was basically a graphic show. There weren't any beams in this. And when I'm talking about beams, I'm talking about aerial beams, atmospherics, like you would normally think of lasers at a concert. So the latest, we did the Waverly Hills Christmas show a few years, and basically me and Ryan just kind of separated from that and wanted to do our own thing. We came up with the Holiday Laser Dome. It's a 15-minute planetarium style show. We had 6 individually controlled lasers, also synced to music. It was using a mixture of graphics and beams. And I did use xLights and FPP to control my megatree and some arches on the outside of the dome. So I wasn't actually using xLights in the actual show, but it was incorporated on the outside in what we called the Holiday Village. Hopefully next year there will be some incorporation with LED lighting actually inside the dome itself. The dome is it's a 36-foot diameter geodesic dome. So we purchased this and got in with the Louisville waterfront and did it. And it was 30 days. Sorry, I'm a little nervous, guys. It was 30 days. It was up and running for 30 days, and we basically had shows running Thursday through Sunday on the hour from 5 to 10 p.m. It was paid for, so people had to purchase tickets. Here's a little snippet of the show. I'm gonna try to get this back. There we go. And Prancer and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. But do you recall the most famous reindeer of all? So I think you get the idea. It was fun. It was a lot of work. I almost lost it a few times. It was a pretty daunting task for me and Ryan, but we got through it, and I think it turned out really well. Let me see here. Sorry. Okay, this is a little video of the outside, just to show you. We got trees with. I got some dumb lights on all these trees connected to DMX. Floodlights around DMX floodlights around the dome. Built a mega tree, and we have some also some arches.
To tell you that.
So yeah, so that's what I do. And I'm going to talk now about actually how you can incorporate lasers. So types of laser integration, aerial or beam shows. And just to mention, there's a saying, if there's no haze, there's no lays. Lasers pretty much require hazers or fog machines to be seen. Without some sort of medium for them to reflect on in the atmosphere, you are normally not going to be able to see them very well, even high-powered lasers. Graphic projections are a lot of what I was just showing you. That's basically making images and projecting them onto surfaces. Lumia, diffraction lenses, and I'll go over all these. Laser mapping is another really cool thing that can go into your display. I'll show you some examples. This was done by, I don't know who actually did this. This is found on the Penguin website, and I'll get to all that. I'll talk about Penguin later. Let me go back into full screen here. Okay, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and play this, and I think this is going to be up a lot of your alleys. There we go. On a caution way,
There was no one there in cold and snow. I saw your face on a better day. On a better day.
So yeah, that is an example of a beam show that you could incorporate into your display. Lumia and diffraction lenses. This is something you see a lot, kind of popular in the Christmas arena. These are actually lasers with lenses that diffract and spread the beam out that you can put on your house. Lumia, this is not a very good picture. I will show you an example of Lumia a little later on. It is also very cool. This is a video of laser mapping. I did not do this. Frederick, Oklahoma, Ramona Theater laser mapping. I want to make sure the credit is given. But this is a really good version of laser mapping. I think you kind of get the idea there. This is one that I did at Churchill Downs in the paddock area. Some laser mapping. I'm sorry, going through this here. Here we go. So yeah, and I'm in trouble here with this. So as you can see, I actually had to mask out the windows in this because I couldn't reflect the lasers on the windows because there are actually people walking around in that building. Here's one more.
Oh, I'm intoxicated. I got a legend on the way. I'm falling.
So I think you guys get the idea. You know, instead of outlining your houses in LEDs, laser is a very good option. All right, so considerations before use. You will have to consider the legal laws and regulations, and I will go over those. Safety. The learning curve, it's new software, new hardware, etc. And then right here, I got some dollar signs for money. It can be a very expensive hobby. It doesn't have to be, though. And here is the picture of the big scary laser. All right, legal rules and regulations in the U.S. So in the U.S., the use of lasers is regulated by the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, the CDRH. It's a branch of the FDA. An FDA variance is required for laser operators and laser devices. And that's specifically class 3B and 4 lasers, which are really defined as any sort of lasers that can harm your skin or eyes. A variance is going to be specific to the usage. You have to specify if you're using lasers indoor, outdoor, whether you will be audience scanning, which I'll talk about. Also, whether it's a one-off beam show or if it's something that's going to be happening, weekly, daily. Also, manufacturer, so you have to, list the manufacturer and the power of the laser as well. When I talk about an FDA variance also being required for laser devices, the lasers themselves have to be varianced in order to be sold in the US. There are certain requirements like key switches, e-stops, basically like warning stickers on the boxes. So you want to make sure when you are purchasing a laser that you are complying with US laws. A lot of lasers being sold on eBay and things like that these days are not actually in compliance. It's not going to stop people from buying them, and I'm not the laser police, but just thought I would tell you that. Also, a show report must be filed yearly to maintain compliance. So once you get your variance, and it's basically just going to the FDA website and filling out a form, mailing it in, explaining. It's not easy. There are a lot of confusing things in the documents, and I actually had to have a guy help me get my variance when I first when I first got it about 7 years ago. But yeah, the show report is basically what you've been doing that year, all the shows you've done. So there is a lot of there's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of hoops that go with lasers. Laws and regulations continued. Talk about the FAA a little bit. The FAA, you are required to have FAA clearance for outdoor laser shows in the U.S. for unterminated beams. Unterminated meaning they're not hitting buildings. You can have an outdoor show that terminates on a building, so it's not going to hit an aircraft. Although there are some states that I believe this still requires a variance, even for unterminated beams, like New York. Do not shoot lasers at aircraft. That's, pretty much a given, I think, for most of us, but people still do it. It can cause flash blindness for pilots, and this is an actual picture from a laser pointer being hit into the cockpit. It amplifies in the cockpit, and it is actually pretty blinding for pilots. So also in the U.S., there are heavy fines and possible jail time. They take it very seriously if they find you. All right. Audience scanning. Audience scanning is defined as when the laser light is intentionally projected directly into an audience, meaning the lasers are actually scanning over your eyes onto your body. This can be achieved safely if proper steps are taken with class 3B and 4 lasers. It requires its own audience scanning variance. That has to be specified in your variance for the operator and the hardware. So there's going to be measurements that are required that you don't exceed what's called the MPE, and that's the maximum permissible exposure. As far as devices that have to be used, this little circuit board right here is called the PASS system. It's built into the laser. What it does is it regulates the scanning systems. It won't allow you to have, say, a static beam pointed directly into the audience for very long. It will shut down. It does a lot of stuff, but anybody who does audience scanning in the U.S. pretty much is going to be using a pass system built into the laser. So this is a divergence lens. So as you can see, it's kind of a half moon lens. And the idea is once the laser beam scans low enough to where it's hitting the audience, it's actually spread out. And we call that divergence when as a laser spreads in space to where the power is being dispersed over that area. And there, basically what you have to do is you have to set up measuring devices and measure the lasers in where the audience would be standing, and measure that to make sure you're below that MPE. I know a few people who do audience scanning in the US. It does take a lot of work. Again, it takes another variance that can be difficult to acquire. I don't have an audience scanning variance because I don't really want to deal with it. I tend to just shoot lasers above people's heads and stay compliant that way. All right, laws and regulations continued. It varies from state to state. Basically, just check with your local government. Report to local authorities like a fire marshal. Here in my city, there's really nobody who really regulates lasers. We don't have a CDRH representative. I report to the fire marshals, and most of the time they don't really know what I'm talking about. Sometimes when I'm using haze in a building, we have to turn the fire suppression systems off. We will need a fire marshal to do a fire watch. So that's one of the things you got to think about. Additional information can be found on the FDA.gov website and ILDA.com. I'll just go to the ILDA site real quick. The ILDA site has a lot of really good information. ILDA, the International Laser Display Association, it is an organization that was established by laserists back in the, I think, late 80s, early 90s. They wanted an organization to, be able to govern themselves and talk, and basically have a say with the CDRH about what's. I'm losing it here. Okay, let me go back here. All right. Sorry, guys. Yeah, but it doesn't have any real government authority, but they do work closely with the CDRH to have laws that aren't totally ridiculous, so we can sort of keep our jobs, but lays in a safe way. Worldwide regulations, laws and regulations vary from country to country. Check with your government. This is a cool picture of some lasers shot outdoor. They must have had FAA clearance for that. Okay, lasers then and now. Back in the 80s, 90s, they were using gas lasers. These were big, heavy machines, often water-cooled. They would normally do a single color with a static beam, and they would often use mirrors and diffraction lenses to make effects. The control options were limited. Lasers now. Now we are using mostly semiconductor diode lasers for the entertainment industry. They are compact and lightweight. They do RGB color mixing, meaning they actually have 3 separate diodes built into the systems, a red, a green, and a blue, and they mix together to make different colors. Software and hardware control options. There are many. DB25 input output. A lot of people will refer to that as an ILDA input and output, or ILDA cable used. It is not really supposed to be called ILDA cable or ILDA output. They are DB25s. It's just kind of been adopted. Also, Ethernet connections over LAN. Built-in scanning systems capable of producing complex patterns and graphics. And any of the lasers that do graphics and have built-in scanning systems are often referred to as laser projectors. You will probably hear that a lot on the laser Facebook groups. So when people are talking about projectors, they are talking about the laser projectors. This laser here is a very cool laser. It's built by Stollinger Labs. Has a carbon fiber case. This is about as big as a shoebox, and it costs about as much as a car. So, but that's ultra high end. Okay. Considerations and options before purchasing and getting into this can of worms. One thing you want to consider when buying a laser is the power output, often measured in milliwatts or watts. This is essentially the brightness of the laser. That's basically it. Manufacturers, there are many. Cont, xLaser, Stollinger, and then I just put China here because there are many laser projectors being made and sold in China. Not that that's bad, but there are some things you have to watch out for, like the legality of use. Oftentimes, these lasers in China do not actually have, they are not variants to be used in the US. So if you are purchasing lasers off eBay, you might not be in compliance even if you have a variance to operate the laser. Scanner systems and scanner speeds. These are measured in points per second. 15K, 30K, 60K are things you might hear or see when buying a laser. I'm going to show you the difference in scanning speeds. It's essentially the more, the faster the scanner speed, the more you can output, the more graphics you can have before the laser starts to flicker a lot. Scanner speed is based on an ILDA standard. Back to the ILDA organization, they did come up with a standard for measuring speed. It's basically you use a test pattern in the laser, and this is based on an 8-degree projection. So I've seen a lot of lasers being sold that say 40K, 50K, something like that, and then you get them and I can turn them on and tell you right now they're definitely not 30. They're more like 15 or 20, and they're not basing this on the ILDA standard. I can tell you that. They're basing it on something else that's just sort of made up. So you want to make sure when you're buying a laser, it's going to say something like 30K at 8 degrees ILDA. Control options. There are hardware options, what kind of software you want to use, and also considering your integration with other platforms like xLights. Again, going back to the other, back to the dollar signs. So this is often based on power output and manufacturer. You can buy lasers from Cont, and I'm going to show you some Cont lasers. Cont is really the only brand I'm using right now. They are not cheap, but they do a great job. They're very dependable. I think it's really the best bang for your buck, but not to say there aren't really good budget lasers out there that you can buy and use. But going back to this, you can basically buy a 3-watt laser from Cont for so much. And then really it's, every watt after that can almost be, $500-$600 per watt once you start going up. The lasers aren't much different, but once you get into a 30-watt laser, it's really, I guess what I'm trying to say is you really are paying for brightness and power, because that's going to depend on where you can use it, whether you can use it outdoors, things like that. Most concerts, live events are going to be using lasers that are at least 20 watt, 15, 20 watts. Those are going to be considered high power lasers. Anything between 1 watt to 5-6 watts is considered a low power. And in between that, you would consider that medium power. Here's a few examples. This is a 30-watt Cont spectrum laser. It's pretty big and heavy. You can see, here's the lens, so you can see that it is kind of a big boy. Over here on the left is a Cont logoless weatherproof laser. This just came out not too long ago. It's basically all the guts of a Cont laser built into a weatherproof house. I actually own one of these, and I will show you what it looks like a little bit later. This is the laser that I use to project the graphics on the outside of the dome. And let's see. Okay, laser operation and control software. I'm going to be talking a lot about Pangolin. Pangolin is the industry standard. There are many different softwares available, but mostly you're going to be dealing with Pangolin because they're good guys. They stay up on their software. They update a lot. There's going to be two options with Pangolin software. There's the entry level is Pangolin Quick Show, and then more advanced software is Pangolin Beyond. This is Windows only. Pretty much all the laser software I know of is Windows only, except for one. So if you are a Mac guy, I'm sorry. I'm a Mac guy too, and but I had to switch to PC for much of this stuff. Again, there are many laser control softwares available, free and paid for. This picture here, you probably recognize. This is the Windows 10 desktop picture. A lot of people don't realize this is actually a laser image, the most famous laser image in the world. There's actually beams projected onto these suspended frames. And I know the guy who was responsible for giving them the lasers to use. His name is Adam LeBay. He's in California, and he won an award for this. It's so yeah. Okay, laser operation and control. Laser DAC. It's digital to analog converter. It's basically, we're talking about dongles that come from the computer and connect into a laser. Over here, this is the DB25 cable that some people refer to as ILDA cable. This right here is a quick show FB3 by Pangolin. This is going to be your entry level DAC. For the most part, it is USB and with DB25 output to laser. Quick show comes with this FB3. Okay, so yeah, that is USB. Network LAN DAC, that's going to be the FB4 is an example, which is the newer updated version of Pangolin's control hardware. xLaser has a system called Mercury, which is a network system much like FB4. EtherDream is another DAC that connects over network, and it works with a lot of different softwares. Okay, talk about the FB4. I'm going to focus a lot on. It can be built in or standalone. And this is a example of a standalone FB4 unit. You have the network connection, and it actually sends out and in with ILDA. I'm getting some chat stuff. Okay, ILDA cable is actually the old DB25 COM port, but yes. Okay, didn't see the chat stuff. All right. Anyway, this is a picture of a Cont Club Max laser with an FB4 built into the laser. I have one of these. I'm going to show you what that looks like as well. You can see that it has EtherCon connections as well as DMX, which I'll go over in here in a second. In the old days, PCI cards were used a lot, put into your desktop machines that would go that would run out to DB25 out to your laser. Basic laser setup. This is computer running Pangolin software. connected via USB to an FB3 DAC or DAC, and outputting over ILDA, which is actually DB25, I found this diagram, to the laser projector. That's going to be your most basic laser setup. Now, I made some well, I didn't make these diagrams. I made a diagram that was really complicated that I'll show you here in a second. And then I found these on Penguin's website, and these are much easier to understand and follow. So the colors up here, as you can see, what this is indicating is that each laser is projecting or outputting the same thing. You can use one FB3, connect that with a DB25 cable to a laser, and actually daisy chain them to as many lasers as you want, really, with the DB25 input and output, and they will all project the same thing. If you want individual control per laser, you would actually need 4 separate FB3s running USB and running separately to each of these lasers. Laser operation and control. I have more diagrams. I will go over them too, and I can always go back. The industry is moving towards network or LAN control and devices with the emphasis on DMX Artnet operation from DMX lighting consoles. Like the Grand MA right here, which is sort of the industry standard when it comes to running giant stage lighting shows, DMX software. And this is also where you're going to see our integration with xLights. It's just one of those things where basically the industry is trying to sort of eliminate having to have a laser operator tour around where they could actually save information onto these lighting consoles, and the LDs can actually operate the lasers, and the laserists can actually design the software or design the show, and all be saved onto the consoles and run over time code, et cetera, et cetera. Integration is what it's about right now. The Penguin is especially trying to emphasize DMX control, Artnet control, time code, OSC, and I'll go over some of these things in a moment. DMX Artnet control. This is a picture of DMX the rapper. I don't know if any of you will think that's funny. Integration with xLights. This is going to be how pretty much how we're going to do that for the most part. Penguin Quick Show, the software can send and receive DMX. Penguin Beyond can send and receive both DMX and Artnet. The software is can be controlled like a traditional DMX lighting fixture, like a moving head. It will have a DMX profile operated with channels. You can use a 15-channel mode, a 39-channel mode, and there's another thing called a server mode, which I won't get into, but it's you can really control everything with server mode. So something that lighting consoles guys might use. This is a picture of the channel assignment for a Penguin laser system. So if I am operating Penguin software with DMX, these are going to be my channels. This is a 16-channel basic layout. I'll talk more about this, but you'll have control options like fade, zoom, position, which page and queue you're going to be triggering in the software, speed. It'll make more sense once I sort of plug into xLights and show you. FB4 maximum options. Penguin is really pushing the FB4. It is really awesome, I will admit. Network integration, EtherCon, something that a lot of the LDs like. Again, it can be built in or standalone into the laser hardware. There is a DMX 512 input and output option. So you can control the FB4 with DMX. There's an OLED onboard menu. There are things like autoplay features where you can set date and time, kind of like an X schedule. This can be used independent from Penguin software. There is an SD reader built into the FB4, and this is kind of a big deal. Before, it was pretty much all software only. Now, what they've done is you can actually save, you can build your cues, your animations, your show in the software, and you can export it onto an SD card into the FB4 and trigger it via DMX, timecode, Artnet. And again, it will work the same way as controlling the software. You can use a 15 or 39 channel profile to control the output of the FB4. So the way I was using the outdoor laser in my display was I was actually sending Artnet from an FPP to the laser, and I had basically made animations on the software and exported it to that card to be triggered, if that makes sense. I'll try to explain a little bit more later when I go into the software. This is the FB4 connection diagram. Very similar to the FB3. The cool thing about this, and this is not really showing, okay. So yeah, this is an FB4, and again, you can go out of with DB25 and daisy chain your lasers. With FB4 built in to the computers, or into the lasers, I'm sorry, you can basically go straight from a switch, a LAN switch, to each laser. And it doesn't show here, but they actually do have built-in switches on these, so you can daisy chain Ethernet cable and still have individual control, because each laser will have its own FB4, have its own IP setting, etc. Okay, so this is going to be probably the most basic way that you would be able to integrate lasers into your xLights display. This will be probably the cheapest way to do it, I will say that. So I have a diagram of a laptop using xLights, outputting to a familiar looking controller here. This is the Falcon controller that many of you know. From the Falcon, you can actually send out DMX to a DMX box, one of the Intex DMX USB Pros I have here. That's a really good one. I have one that I'm using right now that I will show you. So essentially, the Quick Show computer will have USB, will be connected to the Intec USB, and you will be sending DMX from xLights from the Falcon controller into Quick Show, which will then control the laser. So, and then you would output USB to the FB3 or the DAC, and then send DB25 out to the laser. So you're actually controlling Quick Show software with xLights. That would obviously require two separate computers. This could be substituted with an FPP or Raspberry Pi. Then you can actually go down to one computer if you wanted. This is an FB4 diagram that I built. So basically, you would come out of xLights via LAN Ethernet into a network switch, which can then be sent to a Falcon controller, which could then be sent to the Megatree that blew down when I was when we were in operation. It was pretty devastating, but I was actually able to get it up in about 2 days, back up and running. It was very windy in the month of December in Kentucky. I don't know about anywhere else, but we did have a lot of inflatables and stuff, and it was a nightmare keeping all that stuff ready. So anyway, back to, so out of the network switch, you can run into an FB4. The FB4 would then output to the laser. And this is assuming that you have your animations, your laser show saved onto the SD reader of this FB4. So you can eliminate the need for the laser software. This is a diagram that I built at first, and then I realized that it was just way too complicated. So that's when I found all the diagrams on the Penguin site, and this has got all that, but it's basically just into one, and I won't even talk about it. If you want a picture of it, I can send it to you. And then I'll just go ahead and answer some questions if you want, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn the webcam on. Let me see here. Can you see the webcam?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Are there any questions right off the bat before I get into sort of talking about the software and showing you some stuff? I mean, anybody have any questions they're dying to ask?
So I've got a couple questions.
Okay.
One is the cost of the software, cost of
Right.
lasers, time involved in actually doing this.
Okay.
So those are my first couple.
Okay. There are so many options as far as price wise. I mean, projectors can cost, when I say projector, lasers can cost anywhere from, $100, couple $100 to, $50,000. So a lot of that is going to depend on the power and the manufacturer. As far as time it takes, software, I will say the FB3, so the basic entry level into Penguin software, and FB3 is, I believe, $399, and that includes QuickShow. So if you were to get a controller with the free software and a laser, budget-wise, you can get up and running for, under $1,000. It is a pretty expensive hobby, I'm not going to lie. And there is a fairly steep learning curve, but it's not so bad. I know, as far as time, just like in sequencing in xLights, I mean, you can sequence something really quickly, or you can spend 100 hours. So it's really as complex as you want to make it. You can go into the software and just start clicking on animations and get something up and running within 10 minutes if you want. It's like I said, it's a rabbit hole that you can go as deep as you want. To get something, to integrate a laser into your display, depending on what you want to do, it doesn't have to be very expensive. It doesn't have to take you very much time. For me, I just kind of got into the whole pixel thing and xLights, and I found that it's far more time consuming running cables and soldering and doing all that stuff than anything I've done with lasers. I spent a lot of time designing and editing in software, but as far as that goes, I would say LEDs are probably more time consuming to set up. Does that answer your question? Sort of.
Yeah. No. Good. Yep.
Okay. All right. Now let's go to the software here. If I can get in here. Show you a little bit. This is Penguin Beyond. So this is sort of the more advanced software. QuickShow looks a lot like it, and at first glance, you're not really going to be able to tell much of a difference. Under the hood, there are many, many features that are added to Beyond. For instance, the ability to control it with Artnet. QuickShow can only be controlled with DMX. It cannot be controlled with Artnet. So yeah, when you first open it, you're just basically going to see pages of cues and animations. I'm going to go ahead and turn this up a little bit. Is there a way that I can see the video? Because I can't actually see my own video.
It might be in the corner.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. It just says Ed Smith. But anyway.
Sorry.
So yeah, there's all kinds of cues. These are going to be graphics cues. Atmospherics are going to be things like for beam shows. And I'm going to turn on a hazer here in a little bit and show you what haze does for lasers. Like I said, without the hazer, you don't really see the beams. You're just going to see the graphics on the screen.
So there is a question on Facebook. Does Quick Show also run moving heads and trigger hazers and other DMX stage lights?
Good question. Yes, both Quick Show and Beyond have DMX output. It is a very sort of standard DMX operator. It's very, very similar to xLights DMX, basically just channel sliders. When you connect an Intec DMX USB Pro or something of the like, actually I believe Quick Show supports, I think they only support the Intec and maybe a few other devices, DMX King. When you plug it in and you actually tell it that it has input or output in there, you will automatically see a DMX tab open up. I can probably go ahead and just do that for you and show you. So I'll just say Artnet. I'll use this. So you see here that DMX tab opened up and simple channel sliders that can actually then be saved in this workspace as cues. So when I click that, it's actually triggering the DMX. This is called the workspace. It's laid out in a grid. It also has, both Quick Show and Beyond have timeline ability to make and edit timeline shows, just like an xLights. Playlist is kind of like xSchedule, where you can build different timeline shows and play them in a row, just like you can in xSchedule. Going back to the grid, so I have xLights. I have xLights set up here, and I'm going to talk about. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have xLights controlling Beyond with Artnet on the same computer. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to actually set that up with the. I got to turn my output off. With the 127 network. This is the talkback network to other software on your computer. I have it set to Universe 1, and I just set up 512 channels. We're going to be controlling Beyond with xLights. We're actually only going to be using using the 16 channel mode. But I just went ahead and added 512. I'm going to be using different universes for the other Artnet. This right here is actually going to be an FB4 laser. This is a laser with an FB4 built into it. So I'll also be controlling this with 16 channels. I could have just made it 512. And I'm giving it its own IP address, which you can set in the actual menu of the FB4. All right. I also have a DMX Intec USB Pro connected, and that is going to be connected to this thing that's built into one of my lasers called an optical bench. What it is basically it has a rotator that ultimately rotates gobos around the laser to give me effects like Lumia and Diffraction. It is controlled with DMX, which is very cool. And this is a add-on feature that you can get with a Cont laser. I'm going to set this up. I'm going to show you all this stuff here in a minute. You'll understand. So in the layout, really, like I said, I mean, when it comes to controlling laser software, laser hardware, you're really going to be dealing with DMX only for now. I just basically put in 3 DMX devices here, set the channel count, individual start channel, and let me just go into the sequencer here. All right, so Beyond control over Artnet. I'm going to show you a little bit about what that entails here, I'm going to shrink these down so I can show you how it is being controlled. So essentially, we have our beyond control of our Artnet, and this is, again, outputting to the 127 network. And in beyond, I had to basically set that up in the settings to tell, we're going to disable this, to tell beyond that it is receiving DMX input over universe 1, etc. And then I actually have to hit this little DMX in box to tell it that it is receiving DMX. So when we go back to xLights, if you watch me, I'll put this, if you watch the screen to the left, it's going to be controlling the pages, hopefully. See, I am having an issue outputting with Artnet for some reason over the internal. Actually, I'm just going to go back and use. I'm going to go back and use the basic profile. So this mode tells you how many channels you want to use, whether you want to make it really simple or not. All right, so now it is working here. So you'll see that once I turn my laser output back on, it should be outputting. It's probably because my brightness is all the way down. Is that right? What's going on here? What is wrong with this? Okay, I do not know why I'm not getting output to that laser. Give me 1 second here.
We did have a duck go across a few seconds ago. Yeah.
Brightness. Yeah, that is actually outputting from a different laser.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. Really struggling to find out why that is not working. All right. Well, you can see it controlling Pangolin Beyond up here. When I move this slider around, it's actually moving around the selections. So that's actually how that would be controlling the software. That's not working either. There is something going on with my output that's just not, that's just very weird. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to close this and reopen it. All right, opening. Okay, here we go. I do not know why that wasn't playing. So again, when we're controlling beyond with Artnet, again, I'm having some problems with the Artnet DMX control. It appears that I need to move the slider for it to work sometimes. I didn't have my output on. So when I play it, it should stop and start. All right. Yeah, very odd. Anyway, let's move on to the FB4 control of the laser Artnet. And I'm going to move my camera to show you what's actually going on here. All right, so as you can see, can you guys see the lasers pretty well? So I have, this is a laser with the FB4 built into it. And what I have connected is I'm going straight out via Artnet from xLights, connected straight into the laser. And this works perfectly. So as you see, as soon as it hits that, we get our laser output. Again, I'm going to have to look into the whole, I think it has to do with the using the TalkBack 127 network. I don't think Beyond likes it very much. So controlling it over Artnet on the same computer is probably not something I want to do. Optical bench. This is where I'm going to show you some examples of Lumia. Now, see, for some reason it does work that way. So I'm going to control this optical bench with the DMX in here. So you can see here, there are different modes. These are basically different lenses. This would be considered, you know, sort of a picture of Lumia. And I'm going to go ahead and stop this output from this other laser here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this laser and put it into Beyond mode. So now I'm going to actually be operating the second laser here from Beyond as well. So the only thing I'm controlling at this point in xLights is going to be this this optical bench. Now, let me show you. Let's just go to just do like a wave or something, and with the optical bench, I can scroll through and show you just the different types of lenses and what they do. This one's very cool. You can do some stuff like projecting onto houses, that kind of thing. Very cool. Again, this is controlled with DMX, and you can also control the speed, that kind of thing. Let me show you real quickly the difference in scan speeds. Now, this laser here, this is kind of my baby. It does have a 60K scanner set upgrade. They're called Saturn scanners that are made by Pangolin. They're pretty new. This is going to have a standard 30K speed. 30K is pretty much the industry standard for working with beams and graphics. Graphics especially are going to take higher speed. There are going to be more taxing on your scan sets. Things like sheets. Let me turn this. Bench off. Things like sheets and lines are not going to be very taxing, and you can get away with 15, 20K scanning. So to talk about or show you the difference between the scanner speeds, I'll go to a queue here, and this is the built-in workspace from Pangolin. It comes with QuickShow, or it comes with QuickShow and Beyond, so you can open it right away and start hitting buttons and getting output. Certain queues that they have in here are going to be more complex and more taxing. For instance, let me show you this dinosaur. Now you see, once you get into the more complex graphics, you start to get flicker. And that is basically just the scanners not being able to keep up. So this is scanning at 30K. And I'm going to switch lasers here, and now I'm going to be projecting on 60K, and you can see the difference. It's really just more graphics. So again, that's 30, that's 60. Are there any questions right now? I don't want to just ramble.
When you say 15 or 30K or 60, is that kilohertz, the scanning rate?
No, I'm sorry. That's kpps. That's points per second. So what it means is a laser is going to shoot out a straight point of coherent light. You can't break up light. You can't bend light, things like that. That's to make the graphics. What it's doing is it's using a scan set in here with mirrors that move really fast in a sort of XY coordinate system. The speed of which those can move is your scanner speed. 15,000 points per second, 30,000 points per second. What that really means is it's actually shooting 30 or 60,000 laser points per second to make the image appear that it is solid when it's actually a bunch of laser beams going really fast. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Is the single laser then is put through some sort of prism to hit the XY mirrors? So or does the one mirror go in the XY axis to scan the whole space?
So essentially, with a RGB laser projector, there's going to be 3 diodes: the red, the green, and the blue. And they're going to be run through a set of mirrors to then be mixed into a single white beam, which will then hit the XY mirrors and output into. Let me see if I can show you. Let me show you what they look like. If I can make them bright enough. Okay. So as you see, there is a little X and Y mirror system. And the beam essentially hits that bottom mirror and reflects off the top, and they move and spin in a way to make 2-dimensional shapes. This is the picture of the optical bench. It's really just this add-on right here with a rotating gobo system built into it. And again, that's DMX controlled, which is DMX independently controlled from the laser itself. Again, these are Cont lasers. This is one of my first lasers that I bought about 10 years ago. I'm going to plug it in real quick and show you. This is kind of what, no, this actually it does have DMX control. There are built-in shapes and images into the board on this, so you can control it directly. It is a very low scan rate, as you will see, and it essentially just makes some weird shapes and flickers a lot. When you add haze, it does look pretty cool, and I'll do that here in a second. But this is sort of an example of what a cheap laser will do. Not much. It's a single color, it's single color green, which is also an option. You can purchase laser projectors in red, blue, green, orange, depending on the wavelength of the diode. What else? Any questions?
So are there like short throw lasers and similar to like projectors and the distance? So how far back do you have to be? Is there some sort of ratio between the distance from the laser and where it's actually landing at?
Right. So there is these laser projectors, pretty much all the laser projectors in the market have very, very wide throws if you really want them. When you're projecting graphics you really need to stick to the ILDA standard of 8 degrees. So when that's saying if I'm saying that a laser is 30 or 60K at 8 degrees ILDA standard, it's 30K at 8 degrees. If I start bringing it out wide, I'm going to lose speed. It's going to start taxing those scanners, and then you're going to start seeing different. But I'll show you how wide these things can go. So I have this is sort of my the geometric correction area. So I can bring these out really, really wide. But you'll notice that you start hearing them start to work harder. And and this is, a throw of about, 10 feet. So that's the cool thing about using scan systems as opposed to video projectors. You can manipulate them, and they can be on, one side of the room, and you can kind of manipulate them to where you want them to go instead of just having to have the projector exactly where you need it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you show what it looks like with the light going through a haze?
Yep. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that on and turn the hazer on. Start working in a second. There we go. So, add haze and the lasers come to life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the importance of having hazers, and that's also one of the reasons why doing outdoor shows is really difficult. That video that I showed you earlier of the Christmas show with lasers, he probably had a whole bunch of hazers running around his house, and the wind was probably, working in his favor, which it doesn't always do. So that is an issue. And let me make sure I can use these. Right, so pretty amazing. But again, it's also going to depend on the power output. But you can have really low power lasers, and if you have enough haze, they can look really good. So this is a 3-watt laser, and this is actually a 6-watt laser. You can't really tell the brightness difference too much until you are really sort of using this in a like club setting kind of thing. You will notice that they are brighter. Sorry. Any other questions?
So I know 1 year, probably 2 years ago, Christmas Expo, they had a vendor there that did lasers, and they actually rented them at Christmas time for like a month or something like that.
Cool, yeah.
Do you know anything about renting them and what all that entails? And,
Yes.
is it better to rent or buy or what?
There are many places that will rent, and most of the manufacturers out there, like Cont, Pangolin, Laser World, they sell and they rent. They usually keep a fleet of lasers for that. So as far as shows and tours and say 30-day monthly Christmas shows, it can get pretty expensive because they do usually charge day or week rates. They can give you, if you are going to rent a laser for 30 days, they'll probably give you a deal, and it's really going to depend on what laser you want. if you're renting a high-powered 20-watt laser, yeah, it's going to get pretty expensive for a month. I would say for Christmas displays that are up all of 4 or 6 weeks, it may end up being more cost-effective to buy, because especially when it comes to low-powered lasers, because you're going to be spending a lot of money renting. And again, this is going to depend on what lasers you're getting. I mean, you can get some low-budget lasers for a couple $100 and probably rent those for the month for under $300 or $400. It really just depends. I would probably tell people to go to Pangolin, go to Laser World, call them, ask them. On their websites, they usually do have rental prices and such available on the sites.
Now, the images that we see are all pre-created.
Mhm.
And so is there a way, for instance, with xLights, there are images that you can output?
Yep.
Is that possible through this software? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So these are all the cues and animations that Pangolin gives you. With Beyond and QuickShow, there are ways to make and edit your own. There are many ways to do this. This is what's called the Advanced Frame Editor. All kinds of editing tools. All kinds of effects built into these as far as color.
And is there an image size? It's got to be so small or whatever. Are we talking a really small image in order to project it, or is it good resolution?
And that's really going to depend on what I'm projecting. I've got 2 lines up here. Those are not going to be very taxing on a scanner.
Right.
I can go really big with this. That is one of the sort of things that you kind of learn along the way, is what you can and cannot do. There are a lot of limitations as far as that goes, and yeah, like I said, it's just kind of a learning thing, but for the most part, the scanning speeds and all that sort of come into play with graphics more so than with things like atmospherics, where if I'm shooting beams, because these tend to be much less graphic heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It's just for my own. I kind of see this as a way to accentuate your show. I don't know if I could do a whole show with lasers, but if there's a wow feature or something to do, I think this, it could in some way spark it. So the floor is open. I don't know if anyone else has questions. I don't want to dominate the time we have here, but if anyone wants to unmute themselves, feel free to do that or include it in chat. So there's one question in chat. It says, how about 3D? So I'm not sure what that's referring to exactly, but I don't know if you...
Well, he's either asking questions about holograms or questions about making graphics in 3D modeling, which you can do. As far as like holograms, we all probably know they don't really exist. You're really projecting onto some sort of medium. I'm going to show you a picture here. If you look at this picture here, which is not very big, you can see these graphics that are sort of floating in midair. These are actually done with lasers, and what I have, there are scrim materials hanging up here. So the laser is actually hitting sort of a see-through material, and it appears that it is floating in midair. And that is one of the cool ways you can do things like like 3D hologram type effects. Beyond has a 3D modeling add-on to it called Beyond 3D. And if you're talking about doing sort of 3D modeling, this is where you can do it and actually export to laser. It's going to look a lot like Max or Blender, and you can actually import, OBJ models into this and export to laser, if that makes sense. And that's actually a lot of the ways that many of these were, many of the more three-dimensional cues were made. Something like this. Usually they're done in LC Max and exported to a laser. This is a very flickery. That's 30K. Do that in 60K. It's a little bit better. But yeah. So is that?
So another question I have is: so somebody is interested in getting involved in this hobby. Are there Facebook groups that they should look into, or any
Yes.
websites, or how would someone go about finding out more information on
Right.
this?
There's two main sites. Laserist is going to be sort of the
go-to.
It's got, let's see, many people involved. 3,900. Again, I mean, it's a very small community, and when you start this, you'll probably figure out who a lot of people are real quick. Probably in the same way in the xLights community, who does what. The other one specific to Pangolin is going to be powered by Pangolin or Penguin Systems. This is the group. So this actually has more members than Lasers now. But these are the two go-to anything laser. And if
so,
I'm sorry,
let's say someone wanted to spend $500 and get involved in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would you recommend a name brand laser, or a cheap Chinese to get, slightly involved or so?
So I'm just gonna go and just like Google laser projector. Let's see what comes up. And no, those are all okay. I'll just talk about, so xLaser is something you'll find when searching for products. They have a lot of budget lasers, and they even have some high-end stuff. They were purchased by a guy not too long ago. They used to have very crappy lasers. Now they're really doing a good job of making lasers better. This is probably where I would go for budget laser systems. They are going to be varianced, so they are legal to use. xLaser has a really great support system, and they have a thing called easy variants, where they will help you get a variance when you purchase a laser. They'll fill out everything for you, file it electronically. So they are probably who I would go to. If not, if you want to go a little bit higher end, you can talk to the Penguin guys. They are very friendly people, very tight knit. They sell products on their website as well. You can buy their software and download it. They sell fog machines, safety stuff, and laser projectors. That's going to be a little bit more high end. Laser World is the other place I would go to. And I'm going to kind of keep it specifically to people or companies who are, actually a variant, getting variances on their products, and not illegal stuff. So they have a lot of entry level up to high end. eBay, I would probably stay clear of. Anything that just doesn't seem legit is probably not. But not to say that you can't find good stuff from China, because there are a lot of really good replicas that they're making. But again, like I said, I mean, they may not be in compliance with the US FDA regulations. You may not ever get, caught, but I try to stay in compliance. Nobody's ever asked me for a variance. when I'm shooting lasers, but I have it just in case.
Right. So there is a final question in chat. It says, is it correct to say the larger the area or more complex the projection, the more flickery it will be?
Yes, correct. When doing graphics, the smaller the angle that you're projecting at, the better the outcome is going to be. And it doesn't really involve flicker so much as it will involve, you will start seeing the lasers sort of warping and getting manipulated, because what you're doing is you're taking that, you're going past that 8 degrees or whatever from the yield standard, and it's actually warping the drivers. I don't know if I can sort of give you an example, but you'll start to see things like straight lines starting to round off. So if you're thinking of doing, if you're thinking of laser mapping your house, you're going to want a pretty long throw for that. The other option is to use multiple lasers. There are a lot of ways that Penguin software especially has integrated the ability to use multiple lasers to project one graphic, thereby basically taking two 30K lasers and turning it into a 60K laser. So that's another thing, is just doubling, tripling up on the lasers on the output. But let's see, if I take this and go real big on it, let's see if we start getting any sort of rounding on it.
Now, does the laser have to be straight on, or can it be at an angle?
You can project at an angle. So in this is the universal geometric.
It corrects or whatever.
Right, and this is in quick show as well, and there is a lot of play with these.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been times where I've had to really project at really odd angles because it was the only place I could set the laser, and still get an image that looks like it's straight on.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one benefit over things like video projectors.
Okay.
How close or far do you have to be? What's optimal for, let's say you're going to laser map your house?
Mm-hmm. If you were going to laser map your house, you would, if you really looked at that as sort of, did the math with 8 degrees, you could just take the distance and do it that way. But, to really get, to really keep all your lines and everything stable, I mean, you're probably talking about, I don't know, 100 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet. It's got to be pretty far back, because you want to keep that area that you're lasing small.
Right. Okay. Any final questions here before we wrap it up?
I hope this wasn't too boring.
No. Actually, very, very interesting. A lot of different things never seen or heard before. So
sort of stumbling, but I
No.
guess I kind of got my point across.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Garrett. Appreciate it.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.